Welcome to Jazz Time. Jazz Time is an online store that buys, sells, and trades authentic luxury watches. We make these videos so our customers can easily choose the best watch for themselves in the comfort of their own home. If you like this watch, click the link in the description below and buy it at the lowest prices anywhere online. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore Rose Gold Rubber Clad. Reference number 25940OK.OO.D002CA.02. I'm going to talk to you about the bezel, the dial, the case, the bracelet, the movement, give you a little history and my opinion, try it on, and give you my final thoughts. So let's get started. This is the Audemars Piguet, which was created in 2002. This is the Rubber-Clad, and we'll get to why it's called the Rubber-Clad in just a moment. But the Offshore line was created in 2002, and this model, the rose gold version of it, was created in 2006. And it was produced until the first generation was produced until approximately 2012. There are 3 generations of it. You're looking at the very first generation of it. And why is this generation, or why is this watch in particular, special? At the time of this watch being released, no other luxury watch was using rubber as a main component in their watches. Now, Audemars Piguet, being who they are, decided to use very special materials. They have since gone on to use carbon material, ceramic material, in this case rubber material, and no other luxury watchmaker does that. But since AP has done it, many other watch companies have followed suit. IWC uses ceramic, Panerai uses ceramic, Richard Mille uses carbon, and so on. And other companies such as IWC also use rubber in their watches as well. I'm going to explain that in just a moment, but I want to give you some background as to why this watch is so special. So in 2002, when the Offshore was released, they released the stainless steel version of it with a rubberized bezel. It's actually not entirely rubber, it's actually a base metal on the bezel with rubber over the metal. So in a stainless steel case, it has a stainless steel bezel with rubber over the stainless steel. But in rose gold, they actually have rose gold underneath in the same case, and it looks exactly the same, but they covered it with rubber. It's almost ridiculous to think that a company would take a beautiful rose gold and literally cover it up so that you cannot see it. But that is the level of audacity and craziness that AP has decided to go with. Which, if you know much about the brand, they're really known for doing outlandish and crazy things. In fact, they are pioneers and cutting edge for doing these kinds of innovative things with their watches. And this is no exception. In fact, this was done back in 2002. It's literally 20 years ago that they've created a watch out of novel materials, and this is what is in front of you. So let's talk a little bit about this watch and its generations that have come after it. So this watch, the first generation, was created in 2002 to 2012, is what you see in front of you now. First, the stainless steel version came out. Then the rose gold version came out, which is what is here. Then in 2012 until 2022, the second generation of this same thing came out, but with really minor changes. I'll go through them shortly. And then in 2022, which is the 20th anniversary, they pretty much revamped it, and it's a third generation. Now, for this version here, let's talk about the case. It's 42 millimeters. At the time, this was released in 2002, it was gigantic. It was huge, and it was also a big watch craze. So from the 8 o'clock to the 2 o'clock, the longest distance across the bezel, that is 42 millimeters. Now, it looks a little bit bigger because the case of these Offshores are very fat. If you look at where the lugs are, where the case is, it's quite fat, which is a good thing because people who are wearing these Offshores want to have a bigger watch. Okay, so that's 42 millimeters. Not much has changed there. It has the signature lines of Offshore. If you want to look at the side of the case, you can see it has a high polish here, and it has a brushed finish over the case. Now I'm going to turn it on its side, and it's approximately 14.5 millimeters profile-wise when you look at it on its side. you can see the bezel. The watch is made of 3 parts. It has the bezel, which is the top. It has the mid case, which is the middle right here. And then it has the case back. It's similar to other watches, but the difference here on the Offshore is that it's all held together by screws that you can actually see. So if you want to look at the top of the bezel, you can see these hexagonal screws that go around. And then on the back side, you have the screws that actually go through the case to hold it all together. And then you might wonder, well, how do you turn a hexagonal screw on the top? Well, the answer is you don't. Those are actually there to accept the screw. From the back is where you actually screw it in. So if you want to take the watch apart, you unscrew the back. Make sense? Okay, so that's enough about the case. And the case actually has not changed really much between the first generation, second, and third. It basically looks the same because it's all still part of the Offshore line, okay? And I guess I should also point out to you, if you look on the... Here, let's turn it onto the crown side. And if you want to look at the polish here, I might bring to your attention the high polish on the sides of the case are expertly done. It's a signature of Offshore and it sometimes gets overlooked. People don't notice that it has an altering high polish, brush polish finish on it. Very beautiful and signature AP. And okay, so let's talk about the bezel here. As I alluded to earlier, the bezel is actually rose gold, but it's covered in this rubber. And they do that to give this watch a luxurious look, but a casual luxurious look. If they had simply made it in gold like many other watchmakers do, or would have, the watch would look very fancy. It's not that it isn't fancy, it is fancy, it's undercover fancy. It's fancy without trying to be fancy. That's why they covered this in rubber. And as I said in the beginning, it's almost ridiculous to cover a beautiful rose gold precious metal that is dug from the earth in Africa or wherever it comes from, and then you cover it up with rubber so you can't even see it. But that's the level that AP does. They do these kinds of things, and a lot of people like it. In fact, I'm one of those people. I love it. I think it's great. Let's imagine that they covered the bezel with rubber and underneath it's plastic. And how cheap would that be, right? Of course, you can't do that. That's why they covered it in rose gold. Okay, now let's look at those pushers. The pushers are actually also in rubber. They're covered in rubber. And I guess I should also mention, if you don't like this rubber, you know what you could actually do, which is what we're going to do for the customer on this watch, is you can take the bezel off and you can torch off the rubber, as in just take it off. You can literally take it off, burn it off. I can't do it myself, but the watchmaker will do it. You can take it off and then you can refinish the bezel so that it looks modern. And then you can see the beautiful rose gold under it. By the way, the screws will actually protrude a little bit, so you will have to file those down. But yeah, after you do that, it'll look like an Offshore without the rubber-clad bezel. Anyways, so that is the bezel. So actually, I told you about the bezel already, and I told you about the case. Let's talk now about the dial briefly. The dial is anthracite, which is another fancy word for gray. And it has these hour markers 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, 11. Those ones are actually luminescent, and so are the hands. So the watch is actually luminescent at night. Kind of makes sense, it's a sports watch. And it has a chronograph. And the chronograph has a new feature at the 1, 9, and 6 o'clock position in its vertical pattern as opposed to a horizontal pattern, which would be like 6 and 9. And that's because of the movement this way. And the movement, well, I guess we'll talk about that in a second. But the dial is this gray look and it has a white disc on the date section. Now, in 2012, they made a minor change. They didn't change anything on the bezel or the case, but they did change the dial. The dial was a little bit darker of an anthracite, and the date wheel was black instead of white. Not really a big deal in my opinion. It still had this beautiful historical dial pattern, which actually all Offshores have. So that wasn't much of a change. So I can't say that the dial changed much, just very minor things. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the movements. So let's turn this watch over. So when you look at the case back here, what you'll notice here is that the case back is completely flat. There's no ridges on it, and it just has the engraving AP at the top, Royal Oak Offshore, some gold hallmarks, the serial number, and then the screws that I was telling you about. It's completely flat. And that's not a bad thing, but in 2012, when they did a second generation, they sort of made ridges on the back of the case to make it look, I guess, more cool. I'm not sure why it really matters so much, but they did make some ridges on it. If you don't know what I'm speaking about, I don't have an example here to show you, but you could go to jazztime.com and have a look for yourself. And by the way, if you do like this watch, go on to jazztime.com or click the link in the description below and buy it at the lowest prices anywhere online. Anyways, the case back in the second generation was slightly different. It's still a closed case back, so you can't see it. So that's one way you can tell the first generation and second generation. And the movement itself is a 23-26 movement. It's one of their old school movements, but it works great, and it's been used for a very long time. I want to say like 20 years. In fact, definitely 20 years, because it was launched in 2002, and they didn't start making a third generation, which was using a new movement, until 2022. So literally used for 20 years. It's a perfectly good movement, but it is closed and you cannot see it. So in the third generation, they opened the case back so you could actually see it. But the prices on the third generation are almost double this one. So yeah, the third generation is better, but it's also double the price. At least at the making of this video in 2023. The first generations can cost you around $30,000, and the third generation will cost you somewhere around $60,000, something like that. Okay, so the movement, there's not a whole lot to say because it's a closed case back. You can't see it. And I believe actually that the rotor, interestingly enough, is actually made of gold, by the way, on the movement, which is strange to put a rotor in gold because you can't see it. And it's done perfectly. It has all of these great hallmarks, but you can't see it unless you open up the watch. Strange, but AP does that. And that's just the way they are. Okay, let's talk about the bracelet from here. The bracelet is a rubber bracelet, as you can see here. And it uses this fold-over tang buckle or deployment buckle, as you can see. Now, this is kind of an old-school way to do it. They don't do this anymore. They use a tang buckle now, or a pin buckle. They used to use this AP folding clash. I'm not sure how I feel about it. This is a good method. The new method is also a good method. They're both good methods. One uses this beautiful clasp that has the AP logo, and the new one has a pin buckle. So I might also mention that the older generation, which is the one right here, you cannot remove the strap. It does not have an interchangeable strap. On the newer generations, you can actually remove the strap without using any tools, but they didn't know that back in 2002 or 2006 when it was produced. But the bracelet basically looks the same. It's a rubberized bracelet and also kind of the first of its kind. AP is making a lot of first of its kinds. They're the pioneers, really. I mean, people are thinking, how can you put a $30,000 price tag? Actually, at the time this was released, I believe it retailed around $40,000. So how can you make a watch worth $40,000 and put it on rubber? You put G-Shocks on rubber? How can you put an AP Audemars luxury Swiss watch on rubber? You know what? They did it anyways. So it was crazy and it was revolutionary at the time. In fact, right now it's still kind of revolutionary. So that's one good thing about picking an AP as your watch. You get a luxurious brand that doesn't look and is not in your face when it comes to luxury, but those who know. Anyways, that is the buckle. So let me try on this watch. I am 200 pounds and my wrist is 7.5 inches. And here is how it looks on my wrist. My thoughts on this watch are that it's a fantastic watch, especially for the price around $30,000. If you buy an older generation, it looks almost the exact same as the newer generations, except it doesn't have some of the nicer features, as I mentioned earlier. But at the same time, it doesn't cost you double the price. The newer generations cost you about $60,000. The older generations, half that for basically the same look. It is a beautiful watch. It's very undercover. So for those who don't know, it just looks like it doesn't look like a cheap watch, but it doesn't look like an expensive watch. It looks nice. What would I be wearing with this? Definitely not a suit. I would be wearing this in some type of sporting manner. Jeans, t-shirts, shorts, this kind of thing. It's kind of a sporting look, but a luxurious sporting look. Maybe on a yacht, maybe in your loafers on a yacht, in the Caribbean somewhere, I don't know. So what do you think? If you want to buy this watch, click the link in the description below to buy it at the lowest price anywhere online.
If you want to find out more about the watch you just saw in the video, you can just click below on Show More to see the full description. Then you can check the link next to Model as seen in video, click on it and you will get to the proper page where you can see all the details. If you're watching on the mobile phone, you have to click on the arrow down on the right hand side below the video to see the full description. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you would like to share this video with your friends, you can use the share button below and share it on any platform you like. If you have questions, constructive feedback, want to tell us about some mistakes or misspeaks, just write a comment below. If you want to see more videos like this, you should subscribe to our channel and visit our channel page where you can find all the videos. And if you're interested in a specific watch brand, you can check out our playlists. If you want to check the price for a watch or want to buy one, remember at jazztime.com you always get a steep discount, so you should check the prices with us. If you want to know the price for a specific watch, just go to Google, type in JazzTime, plus the brand, model and the details you're interested in, and Google will find the right page for you. Thank you for watching.